Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the third debate of the Vani series. Before we begin the debate, we have a few announcements to make. First of all, we are, uh, first of all, we got feedback from a lot of juniors and as well as our classmates that the logo of podium was seeming very uninteresting. So we decided to change the logo. So here we are launching the new logo of podium. And the tagline of Speak Up represents all three dimensions of podium, that is the speaking, debating, as well as the literary dimension. So the second part would be that we've also been assigned a small. We also successfully found a sponsor for our club. It is News Bites. The short news, an app which delivers news all around the world in 7 minutes. So they say they provide both context as well as along with the content of the news. So go give it a try. So without much ado, we would like to start the event. Today's debate topic would be: can science tell us right from wrong? So I would like to call Anu Guru, who will be the moderator for today, to explain the rules of the debate.
Thank you, Anirudh. So the rules are very simple. Both the speakers will have around 7 minutes for the opening address. After this, there's a no 7 minutes for opening. So 7 minutes for both the speakers for their opening speeches. Then speakers can argue with each other about that one for 10 minutes, followed by an audience question round of around 10 minutes, which is then proceeded by the final speeches by both the speakers for 4 hours. You got this, Professor. So, I think it's not getting more than 5 minutes. So, let's not waste any more time. Let's start.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, I'm extremely grateful for being chosen for this event, so thank you to Team Podium for that. And also, it's a privilege to be sharing the stage with Professor Vani sir. So, thanks. So, I would like to begin this debate by making two fundamental questions regarding the debate here today. So, first one being what is science, and the second one being who decides right from wrong. So, science is largely defined as the intellectual and practical activity encompassing systematic study of structure and the behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. So, what I'm basically trying to say is that we are not going to limit this discussion only to technology. We are going to open it to other realms as well. So, because when you hear science, you mostly think of technology and medicine, so I'm not really limiting it to that. Now, last term, I took a class on business ethics, and this is really when I got in touch with a lot of different philosophies from various philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant, etc. And this is where I learned about something called as utilitarianism, which in a nutshell explains that if something is done for the greater good, it is considered ethical. Whereas another theory by Immanuel Kant says that the ends cannot justify the means. So what it means is that if you, even if you're trying to achieve something good, and the means that you use to achieve that is, what do you say, bad or unethical, it's not really moral or ethical as a whole, which utilitarianism then contradicts. So what I'm trying to say is that what would seem right for me would not seem right for you or the other way around. So this is where scientific methodology comes into play, because using scientific methods to reach a decision helps you achieve consistency, and there's hard evidence to support this, as well as there be universality with the decisions. So what is right for me would be right for you, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of philosophers today are moving towards empirical methodology and reasoning, like Stephen Baker, Sam Harris, Peter Singer, etc. And I came across Sam Harris's debate when I was researching on this topic, and what he mentions is, although a bit extreme, what he says is that once scientists begin proposing moral norms and papers, supernatural moral systems will join astrology, witchcraft, and Greek mythology or scrappy. Although this is very extreme, there are many examples which confirm the presence of science going through the illusion of evil. So, for example, once upon a time, man thought that fire was evil, and when he first encountered it, and today, obviously, we can see how we can harness this power, and we cannot do it without it today. So, the key takeaway here is that scientific methodology is the best way to deal with the moral dilemma, rather than just going by intuition. This is why we are here in the first place, to make more rational, systematic scientific decisions. So with that, I'll close my opening statement. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks Archana for that nice speech and also for the kind words about me. So, uh, so I'm happy and somewhat pleasantly surprised with the invitation. Happy to be here and contribute to this cultural debate that should be part of the academic institution, and pleasantly surprised at the qualities of erudition that I supposedly possess. So the topic of our debate today is, can science tell us right from wrong? So let me start by saying that I am not anti-science. Science as we know it today has contributed much to improving our lives. Deadly diseases have been eradicated. With modern medicine, pain has been reduced. Human beings can live longer, happier, and less painful lives now. And science takes much of the credit for this. Scientific thinking has also helped in ridding large parts of the world of ignorance, superstition, blind belief, as Archana rightly pointed out. Reason has helped in shaping more egalitarian in thinking, leading to drastic reductions in inequalities and discrimination. Science as an institution continues to exert a formidable and by and large positive influence over our lives. Yet for all its progress and the benefits it has provided us, if you ask me the question, can science tell us right from wrong? My answer would be a clear no. To explain why I think so, let me start with telling you what science actually is. We all have this mental picture of science from our school education, garnered from scientific writing, and from representations in popular media. This is a picture of science as an entity which is unitary, objective, value neutral, and above all successful. Now, this monolithic picture of science serves the purposes of the scientific community very well. However, it is a wrong picture. So, what is science then? Simply put, I disagree with Archana on the complicated definition that she gave. Simply put, science is what scientists do. A set of activities that scientists engage in de facto becomes science. So science is an entity that is riddled by ideology, politics, even unity. Thomas Kuhn's famous work on science tells us that scientific discovery is very often a result of chance events, serendipity. Moreover, the scientific community, like any other community, imposes its own rules, hierarchies, and even idiosyncrasies on scientists. Most problematically, the mask of science is often used to cloak power. So science becomes a handmaiden of the powerful. Western science suppresses local knowledge, local practices, and sweeps them under the carpet of irrationality or even superstition. It attempts to universalize its own standards and quote Paul Ferrer promotes cultural murder. So I hope I have made it reasonably clear to you that scientific enterprise is more irrational and more subject to power and politics than is popularly presumed. Science is not a sphere of inquiry disconnected from other human activities. It is embedded in society and as such is socially constructed. Power uses science to its own ends. Some of the most prolific inventions of the human race in the atomic bomb are the result of this unholy alliance. Normal science, as Spoon very succinctly puts it, is an admirable entity for solving the puzzles that confront scientists. Sometimes these puzzles concern problems of relevance and interest to humanity, so I wish to emphasize that this is not necessarily always the case. Science, my dear friends, is therefore an efficient way to solve problems. However, solving problems cannot be equated with choosing correctly or doing the right thing. It is here that science falters and we need to look beyond the tyrannies of research, proof, rigor, and so-called objectivity. Doing the right thing is an act that falls well outside the domain of science and scientific thinking. So where do we situate this dilemma? In the course of this debate, I hope to make it clearer. For now, I rest my case.
That was a good opening speech by both the speakers. We heard what they had to say. So now we give them around a minute or 2 minutes for them to formulate their thoughts before they move on to the rebuttal round.
What is the rebuttal round? Is again standing there as well?
No, you she questions you and you question on your points. Go ahead.
Yes, I think both the sides are ready. Ladies first.
So, so I agree with some of the points that you have made. You did mention initially that a lot of what comes out of science is a chance event, like it's serendipity.
Yeah, I don't know whether I said a lot of it, but yeah, some of it.
Some of it.
Yes.
However, it is.
Yeah.
But I don't think that really matters as far as it does something to a large extent.
Yes.
So that is not really relevant to what we're talking about here. And you also talked about suppressing local knowledge,
Yes.
science coming in and suppressing local knowledge.
Yes.
But then I read that before the 1700s, there was a negative attitude regarding dissection of the human body. So they said that once the person is dead, there's evil in them, and if you open the body, all the evil will come out, and all such kind of misconceptions. So someone actually went ahead and did this, and you can see where it has led us to today. Modern medicine has continued practicing on dead bodies, and due to that, we have found cures to many diseases, etc. So, what science from this has done is that it has dispelled those irrational fears, and it has changed the definition of what is right and wrong itself. And in the process, it has made it universal and consistent at the same time. So the local knowledge that they are, it's not really suppressing the local knowledge, it's kind of adding to their knowledge, repository by making their life easier and better in many ways.
Sure. Yeah, so the first point which is completed,
Sure.
So the first point, the reason I talked about serendipity is to make the argument that science is not as rigorous as it appears to be. Point number one. Point number two, to make the argument that science is not as universal as it appears to be. So, point number three, to add point number one and point number two, you get an entity that is extraordinarily shaky and idiosyncratic and also prone to individual scientists' fancies and fascinations. So I'm not anti-science, I'm not negating science at all. All I'm saying is that the picture that you have of science that leads people to think of science as an entity that can solve all problems under the sun, whatever be the nature, that picture in itself is wrong. Second point, so that's the reason I brought in this whole issue of serendipity. About suppressing local knowledge, again, the whole point, and you yourself made the point, I believe, that science is universal, or I would argue that it tries to be universal. It tries to universalize itself. And science is very much, was very much biased with the Imperial project. The Imperial project of, so it's not a coincidence that, we had, or the lack of vehicle. Again, I'm not saying that Ayurveda or, Eastern sciences are superior to Western science. I'm not making that argument. All I'm saying is that there are things, local traditions, local knowledge, local beliefs. There are systems that are valuable to us, that are important to us. And science tries to universalize itself, or a certain version of science. But science has become so theoretical that the moment you say science, you think about a certain very limited entity, a certain very limited entity that is highly vested in the forms it takes, and even highly masculine. So, as in the whole idea of controlling, the whole idea of of subjugating nature, feminists would argue is a highly masculine idea. And that's not surprising because most scientists were men, and so their ideas are bound to be masculine. So that's the counter that I have to the points.
To take up your first point, science is not ultimate. That's not the claim that I'm trying to make. But what I can also say to support that is science is evolving, just like anything else. What we knew even 5 years back compared to what we know today, there is a large change in what we know while back and what we know now. So it keeps building up as and when people experiment, discover things. It just keeps adding to the knowledge base. And science is not. I believe that. I really don't believe that it's what do you say the ultimate decision in. It can help you make decisions as such on its own. It gives you the basis to make the decision, is what I'm saying. And using scientific methodology to reach a conclusion between what is right and what is wrong is the point that I'm supporting at this moment. So, and I would also like to ask you about the point that you mentioned regarding science being masculine. There are female scientists, and there have been female scientists very early as well, like Marie Curie. So I don't really agree with the fact that science is masculine and.
No, I can't resist putting it there.
It's a battery.
Continue.
So that's what I want.
No. So I'll go from I'll go backwards. I'll go from the last point. It's ironic that I have to back for feminism, but I will do it anyway. So when I say science is masculine, there is a simplistic vision of the masculine. Am I audible? Okay. The simplistic mapping of the masculine to men. That mapping is not altogether correct. So the masculine is a set of behaviors, and a set of behaviors that feminism takes as the other. So men are not the real other of feminism, but rather it's the masculine. So having said that, most men behave in masculine ways, so that they become the others of feminism. Having a scientist, if you must be aware of Watson and Crick and the discovery of DNA. So Watson himself has admitted later on, after getting the Nobel Prize, there was this particular female scientist who worked. Unfortunately, she succumbed to radiation, or she was a radiologist. So I don't know. They used a lot of radiology instruments in their research, and she succumbed to cancer. So Watson, much later, in the post-feminist era, he admitted, or rather he acknowledged, I'm not blaming Watson or Crick, because human beings are the product of their times. Human beings behave in ways that are dictated by their times. However, Watson and Crick later on said that they had treated this particular woman very badly, in ways that would lead to sexual harassment allegations in the present day era. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that even if you have female scientists in science, it still continues to be. Eventually, it might not be, but it still continues to be. The whole ideology of having a subject and having an object, or rather having a researcher and having a subject. I'm sorry. That whole power distance is a very masculine construction. That's the argument I was making about science being masculine, which the existence of females is not. Women can behave in highly masculine ways, and you can look at the political examples. Move on. So that's point number one. Point number two. this entire notion you gave of science being something that is progressive, something that progresses from something to something better. That itself is a notion that is problematic. Because science doesn't progress in a linear fashion. It moves in jerks and bounds. It sometimes doesn't move at all. It sometimes moves backwards. Sometimes, theories that have been abandoned as being outdated later on come up as being relevant. So what I'm trying to argue is that we have these notions of history, of science, all these we have this notion of human race, humankind as progressing from something that was backward to something that is more forward thinking, more cool and more developed, etc. These notions are not true. If you look at the scientific evidence, look at the way science progresses, it's not necessary that it progresses in that fashion. So that's the second point I wanted to make. And the third point I believe is something about this whole notion of vigor and we talk about, I believe, dissection of dead bodies and things like that. Again, I don't want to give the implication, I don't want to give the impression at all that I'm romanticizing ancient Indian history. In fact, I'm dead against that. However, for the purpose of argument, I'll take a particular example. Look at Sushruta. The whole notion of dissecting dead bodies was around a very long time back. And not to repeat, I'm not saying that we should rely on that kind of stuff to do dissection and science today. So the idea that science as defined in a particular way is the only entity or is the predominant entity that will help us to solve these problems is a fallacy. One more point I wanted to make regarding what you said about Jeremy Bentham. Since you brought in that interesting gentleman in the picture, I can't resist talking about him. See, Jeremy Bentham is again one of those people from this toxic science or as economics, if you can call it a science. So, Bentham's biggest invention was what he called as the panopticon. Now, what is a panopticon? Panopticon is something where we are all living in a panopticon in many ways. So, panopticon is something where you have somebody in the middle. It's basically a prison. There is a prisoner in the middle. There is one round of guards around him. There is another round of guards for supervising these guards. There is yet another round of guards for supervising the other guards. So the whole point of the panopticon is that the guards need not look at or need not surveil the prisoner at all times. The prisoner believes that at any given moment there is a high likelihood that the guard might see him. So this is the biggest invention of this particular gentleman. So, which as you can see is not an invention that is patterning to humanity. In fact, John Stuart Mill, an economist, called Bentham. Bentham has the completeness of an incomplete man. That's the statement that he gave about Bentham. And utilitarianism again, the main attempts of economics to become science, utilitarianism is deeply embedded in that attempt. And forgetting the attempt to become science, the whole utility notion itself, again, I would argue, encourages very toxic thinking and very toxic forms of behavior. So, those are all probably anti-human concepts. I wouldn't, in any sense, put those as concepts that are pro-human or pro-humanity. So, I just wanted to clarify, since you brought it Bentham, I wanted to dispel some myths about Bentham.
So for the total round, and so you are first. We can take a minute. I'm done.
So the audience.
Yes. So, it's open to the audience. The audience can direct their question to the type. Maybe a little louder.
Do you believe that we specify lines, or do you believe that the way you go through it to reach
Okay, technically, I don't agree with both utilitarianism as well as Kantian. for why guided philosophy. Why I brought that up is basically to bring out the point that um, reaching a decision about whether something is right or wrong based on multiple people's opinions without actually having proof that it would actually work is problematic. Whereas what happens is in science, science gives you a clear-cut path. It says that you follow step 1, step 2, step 3, and this will be your result. So that's basically what I was trying to get at. So
I think initially you mentioned the Greek mythology, so you were telling something similar, so I just had this.
right. I just brought up these points to show that philosophy is very changing, varying thing based on the person that comes up with these theories, and science, on the other hand, is universal.
Somehow I don't know if the Western philosophy believes that the means really matter and not of reaching the ends.
Right.
Then Lord Krishna must be the most unethical person on planet. So because that's how it's coming about. And the very thing that you mentioned about postmortem, if the person who did that initially did not follow that rule, follow that particular system or the culture where he was bounded in,
Right.
he would not have gone ahead and accepted that.
Absolutely.
So he broke the system there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. So that changed the entire perception of what is right and wrong.
So Hari sir, I have a question for you. It's like when you say that science has actually suppressed the local culture, though it is true to a large extent. I have a question for you. That if you look at
I'm not saying local culture. Culture is again a separate domain. I'm not getting into that. I said local forms of knowledge, local knowledge practices.
Right. So if you look at any of our very Indian practices, for example, something like yoga or Alaripai, for example,
Yes.
that's one of the most ancient martial arts or one of the most ancient forms of things that have ever been on this planet.
Yeah, and just to interrupt, yoga is not. Yoga is. Yeah, yoga is not as ancient as you think. So that minor point aside, yeah.
Yes, so thank you for the correction. The thing is that if you look at the world now, you have more Westerners and more amount of researchers actually doing research on things like yoga compared to Indians who actually don't believe in a system like that.
I'm not very sure about that.
But we have something like the American Journal of Yoga and a lot of things like that. So
Yes.
don't you think that science has also carried things across the world?
It has taken, and it sort of proves the point that I was trying to make, that yoga is something that worked. The practitioners of yoga knew that. Without randomized trials, without blind experiments, without all that paraphernalia that surrounds Western science. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that now Western science has taken that and tried to test it using their own methods. And we, ironically, need that to convince us that what we knew to be right is actually right. You're getting my point?
Yes.
That's the sort of argument buttresses my point. In that sense.
So you still believe that science, proves contrary to whatever was discussed?
I get you.
In the sense, like now you just said that we Indians or us, people in this side of the this sphere of the world actually require that Western science will prove to believe what we.
It's ideology. It's a certain ideology that you believe in. I'm not saying again that Western science is wrong. All I'm saying is that it doesn't include all knowledge in the world. And it can't. And it shouldn't. Because knowledge is too diverse an entity to be bottled up in a limited number of journals using a limited number of methodologies. It's far beyond that. So I'm not anti-Western science. So I just want to begin with here. Because it's, like I said, it has helped us in innumerable ways. And scientific temper, scientific thinking, or I would rather say scientific temper, is very important, especially given the times we live in now. Yeah, sure.
So coming back to the theory, there are some people, especially in our present government, would like us to believe that Indians in the past had flying vehicles. We actually went to space. Not that we agree with these people, but you should without a strong method like science that requires proof, there's nothing stopping these people from spreading these proofs as can. So
No, yeah, I should. The people who are historians, things like Dr. Thakur, who I agree or disagree with Dr. Thakur. What I'm saying is that the historians on the so-called left, I mean, I don't know, left and right and all these are fairly arbitrary terms, are the ones who are resisting the methods the strongest. And if you look at history, it doesn't follow the scientific method. So the scientific method is not the only way to arrive at, if you can arrive at the truth.
We are done with the audience questions for the day, and I would like Professor Hari Srinivasa to just come up and finish the closing.
Yeah, so we've had a very interesting debates on the merits of science, on what it can and cannot do. Let me sum up my position and offer some closing remarks on the issue, on a few key issues. So I had started off by pointing out the ideological underpinnings and irrationalities of scientific research. What is most disconcerting about first world science is the way it demeans every other tradition of acquiring knowledge. For example, again, this should not be seen as an endorsement of the thinking of the current government. I'm using it for example. For example, the Ayurvedic practitioners who lived centuries ago, they knew that the food we consume influences the way we think and even our personalities. Now, for decades, Western science ignored this food mind body association. After all, who cares about Indian mumbo jumbo, right? So, however, in the past few decades, randomized and controlled trials, so typical of Western science, have established beyond doubt that our digestive systems are intricately connected to our brains. So, the food we consume does influence the way we think, our moods, our personalities. So, the Ayurvedic practitioners were right all along. So much for superstitious Eastern medical practitioners. But the narrow interpretations of reason and rationality parroted by the prophets of Western science don't die so easily. Even today, indigenous systems of medicine and local forms of knowledge are treated with thinly veiled contempt and also claim to be the sole protectors of reason. So, what kind of science do we need? I would argue that we need a science that does not sneer at other forms of knowing. It does not expect all knowledge in the world to conform to its own straitjacketed rules and norms. We need a science that is democratic, embraces diversity, and above all serves the most vulnerable among us. So such a science would be a wonderful thing, worthy of our admiration and adoration. So let me now turn to the next issue. If science cannot help us distinguish right from wrong, what does help us then? This is a question to which I have no ready and complete answer. Let me, however, make an attempt. The question of right and wrong falls outside the realm of science as we know it. It's a question for ethics, for morality, for all that we hold to be uniquely human. To state the matter simplistically, it's a question of the heart and not of the mind. So, who should guide us in this quest? We may turn to an area of human endeavor that is often mistakenly treated as the opposite of science. I am referring here to the humanities. Art, literature, music, theatre, history, all those wonderful fields that differentiate us from automatons, that make us the feeling, caring human beings we are. The eternal dilemmas of the human mind have been encountered by those who lived centuries before us. And these dilemmas have been recorded for posterity in our great works of art, our great works of literature. Shakespeare's Macbeth will teach you more about power, trust, deceit, and their consequences than a formal course of psychology. Masters such as Franz Kafka, John Steinbeck, have told us about the perils of industrial capitalism and the enormous faceless bureaucracies that accompany it. Looking into our own cultural milieu, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Vedas Bhagavad Gita, these texts inform us about society, our ideal roles in it, using rich narratives that can be understood even by those with very limited literacy levels. It's not surprising that Mahatma Gandhi, one of the greatest of world leaders, used to turn to the Gita whenever he faced a problem which appeared to be intractable. So Gandhi often relied on what he called his inner voice or truth to surmount these difficulties. Now this way of thinking and reasoning apparently helped the great man to mobilize the vast and diverse communities comprising India towards one overarching cause. So my dear friends, let me conclude by saying that science and scientific thinking have their place in the pursuit of solutions to the practical and material difficulties faced by the human race. But on matters concerning right and wrong, good and bad, let us not fall back on scientific reasoning. These need to be situated in a domain much larger than science, the domain of the ethical, social, feeling human mind. Thank you.
So it's very difficult to follow that up. So I'm going to keep it very short. I'm just going to sum up what we spoke about now and my take on it at this point. So during our discussion today, there was one point which came up regarding horrific inventions that Sir had talked about, and I would like to open with this saying that science depends on the way you use it. You can use it to destroy something, you can use it to create something. So that is completely up to the individual that does it. Now, any other way of determining morality should come with some kind of concrete proof that it will hold in another similar situation with certain variables changed. So there has been no method till now which has been able to achieve this. Be it philosophers, for example, they have given their opinions on various issues. They've written books that we read today, but is it really applicable for today? Now, science, on the other hand, changes with the time. It keeps evolving. So you keep adding to your knowledge base, and as you keep doing this, what happens is that your opinions change, and it changes according to the time that you are in. This is something that I feel that any other mode, like social science or philosophy, can't really match as of now. Finally, what I would also like to say is that science is really not the ultimate, but it gives you a very strong basis to make decisions. So that is what I'm going to close with. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. So that was a very nice debate on both the sides. There were a lot of good points put up by both. Some kind of little funny points here, I may say so. Now comes the unhappy time where you need to decide where which side would you agree with. So do you agree with Archana, or so for the motion or against the motion? The choice is up to you. Yes, it's allowed. It's a free society, so it's allowed. So you need to choose whether you're for the motion or against the motion. Choice is up to you. So choice. What do you think? Okay, yeah. For the motion. Okay. Against the motion. Yeah. So the house goes with against the motion.
I don't know, I just had a personal view that maybe we shouldn't have this vote because